So I know I don't really make videos like this usually. I usually have them a little more edited, but there's something I really want to talk about regarding the Runeterra Eternal meta. And I just want to update you guys so you know where I'm at, how I feel about it, and well, as you might have guessed by the title, some aspects where I think it could have been done a little bit better. So I'm gonna start by saying that Eternal isn't actually that great for players like me, which really sucks to say because I was really hyping it up and I was super excited to play with my old favorites. I really couldn't wait to just make some decks with Victor and Zoe and Zillion again. But sadly, in reality, that's not really how things went in the past week. I know it's only been a week, so maybe I'm already like being a little too, maybe I'm jumping the gun a little bit on this one, but I'm pretty sure I can already foresee the next 3 weeks going before we get the new expansion. And before I get into some of these negatives, I guess depending on what kind of player they are, for me they are negatives, I want to say that Runeterra right now is actually in a pretty fantastic spot. I think the game is really fun to play. I think the devs are knocking it out of the park, like ginormously compared to previous months and years with their community outreach, their cards are revealing. Even the variety patch was pretty fantastic. The expansions, even if we didn't get as many cards as we would have liked from the expansion, like only 3 champions, I was hoping for a little bit more. I think it's all pretty great. It's a really fun time to be playing Runeterra. It's a good time to get invested. Game is still as free to play as ever, so just don't let this video like scare you if you're a new viewer or something, or new to the channel or new to the game, because honestly the game is great. It's just that the Eternal meta, for more experienced players and for the type of channel I'm running, it just wasn't all that. And also there's like, I think right now when I'm uploading this video, there's going to be like 3 weeks until the new expansion, maybe 4 weeks, depending on when they do it. I believe it's June 28th they're releasing the expansion. So I think it's really smart that they're doing this Eternal Ladder season, because usually right before a big expansion, there's a bit of a slump in player base and viewer base. So getting an entirely new format with new cards that you have to think about, it's almost like getting a new expansion by itself, but rotation is still pretty fresh. So it's not like, you know, we haven't had time to forget about how frustrating Flock was, how frustrating and cringe Ezreal is. Those cards are still fresh in our memory. So it could just be that this is only an issue for this Eternal season, but I still want to talk about it so we don't get like a repeat the next time. So yeah, Eternal season right before a big patch, free build, the gauntlets, the competitive season, it's all great. Even the variety patch with the new 10 cards we got, great stuff, really good. But to get into some of the negatives now, I'm gonna ramp it up. I'm gonna start with the stuff that, you know, it's like, whatever, this sucks, but I can get over this, into the thing that I think ruined Eternal for me at the very end. So I want to start with talking about some of the new cards that turned out to work really, really well with some of the rotated cards. And the reason these cards were rotated and chosen to go to the Eternal Ladder is because they might have been a little bit too powerful with the stuff that already exists in the game. So that's what rotation is for, right? So to start off with, we have the Set Trundle deck, which is one of the best decks in the game. I think it might not have like the greatest matchup into some aggro decks, but overall, if you're playing Set Trundle, the Ice Pillar, the Old Timer, Field Rush, you have a almost unbeatable combo just from the get-go. What happens is they play Trundle, they play the Ice Pillar on 8, and then they refill their mana, and then they play the Old Timer. And the Old Timer is active, recalls all your units, so they have a level Trundle, they have a double attack Old Timer. There's really not much you can do about that. On top of that, if they play Field Rush and pull Set from their deck, that's exactly 12 mana. If Set is leveled, they get 2 10/10s, and they get to obliterate one of your units and deal 1 to everything. It's a really, really simple combo. You need to play like 4 cards to get it off, and that's just very powerful, but it's fine, right? That's what Eternal's there for. It's the same with Samira. Like, Samira is now played in Draven decks. It's just a full burn deck. Samira got nerfed a few times, but all these cards, like getting Valfeast back, getting Flock back, they just work really, really, really well with some of the new cards. Pirouette, Flock, Disintegrate, it's like an unbeatable combo. We're seeing the return of Cat Annie with Ravenbloom, the new Condensed card to print your Ravenblooms, or print your Tybox, I guess. And that's really, really good. That's stupidly powerful, but yeah, that's what the format is for, so that's all fine. Another thing that I also didn't enjoy is the variety patch didn't really get time to shine. We had cards like, we had Captain Indari, the Beguiling Cobra, Perfidious Promoter, Royal Shimmerwing, Altar to Unity, we had Pack Attack. All of these cards seem to be more or less built around cards. They require a very specific archetype, but because we just got the Eternal season, none of these cards, except Condense, Blowback, and kind of Innovative Blacksmith and Sacrificial Scholar a little bit in some Pantheon and Timeline deck maybe. So besides Blowback as a discard card for Scion Draven and Condense to print your Tybox, none of these cards really did anything. They're not build-arounds. They're just like there as another tool to make these already strong decks even stronger. That's a real shame. We got 10 new cards, but they were completely overshadowed by the Eternal Ladder. So What happened to me is I went into the Eternal Ladder. Like I was hoping for some, you know, some innovative builds, some cool decks that I got to play against. I got my Beguiling Cobra deck, my Perfidious Promoter deck, my Royal Shimmering deck, my Burp deck, my Dog deck. And what happened is I'm just playing against aggro. I'm playing against Jin Annie. I'm playing against Sundisk. And, you know, nothing against those decks. They're pretty cool. It's just that it seems that creativity was kind of like out of the window from the very get-go. While I was ready to play with some of the new toys and some of my old toys. But yeah, all players only wanted to play with like pre-built decks, and that's also kind of reflected in like the ladder. Like a lot of the decks at the top are not new decks; they're all old decks that got a buff. And that's my next point that I want to get into. And this I think is where my real issue is with Eternal Ladder and why it's not great for a player like me. What happened is there was a balance patch, and this balance patch reverted a lot of nerfs that happened in the past. Poppy is back to being a 3-3. The Abomination from the Curse Keeper is a 4-3. I'm gonna quickly pull up the list here. Draven is a 3-3 again. Timelines is back to 1. Grand Plaza is back. And mostly the Abomination, Poppy, and Draven are really just taking over the meta entirely. When you're playing Eternal Ladder right now, those are pretty much all you're going to be playing against. With, you know, maybe some Ezreal deck in there, which is honestly even worse than all of that, and the set Trundle that I just talked about. Obviously, these decks were all nerfed for a reason, so these decks are now completely insane because they got some new tools, like Nasus became a 3-3 because of Standard, where he didn't get any love, but they also got the Abomination, so I like Thresh Nasus. I really like the concept behind the deck. It's the Slay archetype, and growing a really big Nasus is just really satisfying. But what happens right now is they play the Bakai Reaper on 1, they play the Curse Keeper on 2, and then they play the Blighted Caretaker on 3. And not only is their Nasus like already a 7-7, I'm also taking like a million damage on turn 3. And then they get a really easy way to end the game with, you know, a Nasus that has at most 4 stacks, because Atrocity is also back to fast speed. And it's really hard to compete with that, you know? And again, that's all fine. We also have a 3-3 Draven. We have Blowback for that deck to make it even more aggressive. We're seeing 3-3 Poppy. So with all this stuff that happened, the meta is just super fast, super aggressive. Like this 1-2-3 curve I just talked about with Thresh Nasus, that would normally be a deck that plays a little bit slower, even if they get like a great opening. They're supposed to like stack that Nasus, play the Thresh, have their stuff die. That's not really a thing anymore. Especially like Poppy Ziggs had a 65% win rate for the longest time. It's dropped down to 60% right now. Completely insane with a 3-3 Poppy. They get access to Decimate again. They get access to the new Pirouette to stun, go wide infinitely. We have the Crimson Pigeon in that deck too now. Insane early aggro cards. So what this ultimately meant for someone like me, because I can see that there are players that enjoy this. They like just having like 5 or 6 tier 1 or tier 0 decks, whatever you want to call them. I guess tier 0 is not really the right way to call it, but these tier 1 decks, there are players that are like, okay, I'm gonna refine my Poppy Ziggs deck to be able to beat everything in the meta with some tech choices. I'm a Nasus Thresh player and I'm really good at it, so because I understand this deck so well from the past and it's now even stronger, I'm gonna have like an 80% win rate with it. I get that. For some players, that's great. But now look at it from my side, right? And this is my real issue, and this is why it's hard for me. This is the core issue for me. This is why it's hard for me to really enjoy Eternal. Look at a card. I'm gonna go to my YouTube really quickly. I'm gonna look at the decks that I played right before rotation happened. Okay, so I scroll down a little bit. You guys know I'm a meme player. One of the decks I played that I really enjoyed was actually a Warden of the Tribes Otacon ramp deck, and somehow I had great success with it. I think I had like 60% win rate or something. Well, it was probably even higher than that in like a 20 game sample size, and I really enjoyed that. The deck was slow, but somehow right before rotation, it just made sense. It got wins. It was a really good time. One of my favorite decks that I played in that period. What happened now? If I go to Eternal and I look at a card that got rotated that I want to build a deck around. Like this deck had Howling Abyss. Howling Abyss was never really that good. It was playable, but it was never good. It got buffed once, still didn't really see any play unless you were me and maybe you played like a full control deck with Howling Abyss, but there were always better options. If I want to take Howling Abyss now and I want to build a deck around it, it's not really like that card didn't get changed. Nothing happened to Howling Abyss. It's still the same card that it was before rotation. It's still the same card, maybe a little bit better than it was 2 years ago. And now look at a 3-3 Draven. Look at a 4-3 Abomination. Look at a 3-3 Poppy. All these cards got buffed. The gap between tier 1 and tier 2 decks has gotten so large because of that. This is my Howling Abyss, right? Nothing changed. These were the decks before, and then they get buffed. All these tier 1 decks just got buffed. So the gap has just increased significantly. And that makes it really hard for me as a deck builder to take these niche concepts and build something around it, because I was already losing to tier 1 decks, and because of these buffs, I'm losing even harder to these tier 1 decks. These decks were good before, and now they're even better. One simple buff, and they completely grew out of control. I was excited to play my Time Bomb Printer, my Secret Keepers, my Invoke decks, all of that good stuff, but Poppy, Draven, they're all just really aggressive, and I can't compete with that. I can't set up my value. I can't take it slow. I can't get my cards to shine if they cost more than 3 mana. And, you know, not even to mention Ezreal. I know this isn't really like the point of this video, but God, Jesus Christ, I hate Ezreal so much. There was actually like some Twitter drama because I died at 14 HP when my opponent had 3 cards in hand, a 6 out of 8 Ezreal, and they did have like a Seraphine and Bar on the board, but if my opponent has 3 cards, an unleveled Ezreal, and I am attacking them for lethal, and I had lethal in hand with a Hextech Crystal or something, I'm pretty sure I should win that game almost every single time. They had 3 cards, and I lost, and people were defending that. It's like, it's unbelievably cringe to me that people can justify burst killing when somebody is at 14 HP and they have 3 cards in hand. It's unbelievable. Like, I don't know. Burst killing has no place in Runeterra. Combo decks like that absolutely shouldn't exist. Lee Sin is pretty tame compared to that kind of stuff, and that's wild, man. I'm recording this from the future, but I quickly want to add that I see some people compare Time Bombs to Ezreal burst killing. And I know there is a comparison to be made there because they both deal damage at burst, and there's 2 things I have to say about that. One is that Time Bombs need you to do nothing for a couple of turns so you can find your Time Bombs and get your chain rolling. And you're forced to be in Shurima Piltover, so the flexibility isn't there like Seraphine and Ezreal both being Piltover. And 2 is that I've always said that if Time Bombs are above 45% win rate, it should get nerfed, because if the deck is too strong, it is very frustrating to play against. Something I wish Ezreal fanboys would say as well, but apparently 2 damage to Nexus per spell is fine according to them. So yeah, I guess that's my point of this video. I was sad that I lost my Victor, my Zillion, my Zoe, but ultimately I think losing them was always for the greater good, because we also lost stuff like Ezreal, like Flog, like Decimate. Mogwai even tweeted too, like Mogwai said, I don't know if I really want to play in a format that has Decimate back. And I personally don't really care about Decimate because I like Targon, I have my Star Shaping, I have my Guiding Touch, I have my Cosmic Youngling, right? Like for me, it doesn't really matter. But for Mogwai with Decimate is me with Ezreal. It's unbelievable. It's so frustrating to play against. And yeah, I think this is fine for a couple of months. I basically had the same rant in a video. I talked about it extensively about Ezreal and stuff. And this video is basically just summing up how I feel about this for this entire time. So to keep it constructive, what do I hope that Riot does? I hope that they focus more on bringing or testing more, I guess. I feel unfair saying this because I don't know how much they really test, but I think Draven going to a 3-3 while also printing blowback and just bringing back Scion Draven, because Scion got nerfed while Draven was already a 3-2, so Draven going back to 3-3 is just like ridiculous, right? Poppy being a 3-3 and just the comeback of Poppy Ziggs aggro, it's so freaking strong. So I hope that Riot focuses more on these kind of buffs for old cards, for old nerfs that were absolutely just like, they make no sense, right? Like I could see that a slower deck like Targon, like the Cosmic Inspiration used to refill mana, maybe bring something like that back instead of aggro, instead of early game cards. And of course, just take the meme cards. If I want to play a Starlight Epiphany deck, I don't want to deal with a 3-3 Draven or like just super aggressive early game decks, because Starlight Epiphany, it's not aggressive. That card is as bad as it was 3 years ago, and it only got worse because of power creep and now these reverts. I had really high hopes for Eternal. They didn't quite live up to it. I can understand that some players might feel the other way because their favorite deck was like Nasus Trash or Draven, and then they're super happy to get their champion back. And I'll be honest, I'm happy for you. It's not for me. And I hope that there is something for everyone the next time the Eternal season comes around. The next time the patch happens, I hope that I get to play more Invoke stuff. I hope I get a 3-3 Fangs. Like, why can't I have a lifesteal unit when we get all of this aggressive stuff, right? If aggro decks get Decimate back, why can't I have better healing options? So that's all. I'm still going to be loving Runeterra. I'm still going to be playing it. I'll probably still play some Eternal. I'll have some sweet decks instead of trying to compete in it. And if I get burned out from it, I'm just gonna switch to Standard, which is just, it's so weird that I was hyping Eternal up so much. I was like, yeah, I'm playing Standard. I can't wait for Eternal. Now I'm playing Eternal and I can't wait for Standard. It's just this whole competitive and this large gap between tier 1 and tier 2 decks. It's not a fun laddering experience. I hope you guys understand that. Let me know in the comments what you think. I might have like some small follow-up video on this or something, because I always forget to say like one important thing, but I'm pretty sure I covered most of it. If not, I'll update a pinned comment or the description or something. So make sure to let me know how you feel about Eternal, and I'll see you in the next video.